When Rex barked in court, everyone froze. Courtrooms aren't built for surprises. They're built for order, rules, structure. But that illusion shattered the moment Rex, the department's most trusted German shepherd, lifted his head, stared across the room, and barked with a sharpness that sent chills down every spine. Moments earlier, the scene had seemed ordinary enough. An 8-year-old girl sat quietly, holding her shoes in her lap, eyes downcast. A defendant pretended to be calm. The judge flipped through pages of routine testimony. But something wasn't right. You could see it in the girl's trembling hands. You could feel it in the air, heavy, tense, waiting. Then it happened. She stood up, breath trembling, and hurled her shoes with all her strength onto the judge's bench. Gasps filled the room. A pen clattered to the floor. The defendant's face went pale. But Rex reacted instantly. He charged forward with purpose, barking at the shoes like they held the key to the entire case. And in a way, they did. Because inside those shoes lay the one thing no one expected: a silent witness, a hidden clue, a trace of something that could unravel a lie buried deep beneath fear. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a battle between truth and terror, fought not by adults in suits, but by a brave child and a loyal dog who sensed everything. The courthouse always had a certain quiet to it, a kind of sacred hush that settled over the wooden benches and marble floors like a thin layer of dust. But that morning, the silence felt different, thicker, heavier, as if every whisper carried a warning that no one could quite put into words. People shuffled into their seats, tugging at jackets, adjusting ties, clearing throats that suddenly felt too tight. Reporters scribbled notes even before the hearing began. Attorneys leaned close to their clients, speaking in hushed tones that failed to hide the tension etched into their expressions. Something about this case, about this day, had pulled the entire room taut, like a stretched wire. And sitting at the far left of the courtroom, almost unnoticed unless you knew where to look, was Rex. The German shepherd lay beside his handler, Officer Daniels, his front paws crossed, his ears relaxed yet alert. Rex had a presence that calmed most rooms, but today, even he seemed more attentive than usual. His amber eyes scanned the benches, noting every shift in posture, every flicker of unease. Daniels sat upright, the kind of posture drilled into him through years of service. But his gaze wasn't on the judge, or the defendant, or the attorneys pacing at the front. His attention kept drifting toward a small figure sitting alone near the witness section. Emily, 8 years old, petite, shoulders drawn tight, as if she were trying to make herself smaller. Her blonde hair fell loosely around her face, strands clinging to her cheeks each time she breathed in a shaky breath. She held her shoes, pink, scuffed, one lace slightly torn, pressed tightly against her chest. Daniels noticed immediately. Kids didn't sit like that, unless something was wrong. He nudged Rex gently with his knee. The dog lifted his head. Daniels whispered beneath his breath, "Look over there, buddy." Rex followed his gaze, and when his eyes landed on the girl, something shifted in him. His ears pricked forward, his head tilted just slightly, the way he often did when sensing distress that wasn't being spoken aloud. Emily didn't look up. She stared down at the shoes in her hands, like they were the only thing grounding her to the bench. Her fingers curled around the soles, knuckles pale. Every few seconds, her foot tapped softly against the wooden floor, a quick, nervous rhythm. The courthouse doors closed with a dull thud behind the last person entering. Emily flinched. So small, so subtle, but Daniels caught it. "Poor kid," he murmured. "She looks terrified." Rex responded with a quiet, low exhale, a soft huff that meant he'd noticed too. The judge entered moments later and the room rose. Emily rose too, her movements wooden, stiff. When everyone sat back down, she pulled the shoes even closer, hugging them like a shield. Daniels watched her eyes, not wandering, not curious, not observing like children usually did. No. Her eyes were fixed on one place, one person. The defendant. A man in his mid-40s, tall, with a posture that projected confidence almost too intentionally. His suit looked expensive, but his smile, the small, forced one he offered the judge, didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes were cold, calculating. The kind of stare Daniels had seen before from men who believed they were untouchable. Emily's breath hitched when he turned his head even slightly in her direction. Her fingers tightened. Her shoulders lifted. Her body curled inward, as though bracing for something only she could see. Daniels felt the shift immediately, that subtle electric current that rippled across the courtroom when fear concentrated itself in one small spot. Rex felt it too. He lifted his head fully now, his gaze sharp, his ears angled forward, his nose twitching as if he could smell the fear rolling off the child. Daniels instinctively placed a hand on Rex's neck, steadying, reassuring, but also silently acknowledging that he sensed something too. Emily tried to look away, but her eyes lifted. Slowly, unwillingly, drawn toward the man sitting just 20 feet away. And the moment their eyes met, everything inside her seemed to collapse. Her spine stiffened. Her fingers trembled so violently the shoes nearly slipped from her grasp. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Only a shallow, broken inhale that Daniels heard even from across the room. Something in that man frightened her in a way that words alone could not explain. Rex's reaction was instant. A low rumble vibrated through his chest, soft but unmistakable, not aggressive, not uncontrolled, just a warning, pure instinct. Daniels felt the vibration through his palm. "Easy," he murmured, though his own voice held tension now. "Easy, boy." But Rex's eyes stayed locked on Emily, then on the defendant, then back to Emily, as if drawing lines between them. Emily blinked rapidly, panic rising behind her eyes. The shoes slipped slightly in her grip, and she scrambled to pull them back to her chest. Her shoulders shook, just once, almost imperceptibly. The kind of shake that came before tears she refused to let fall. The defendant noticed her fear, and he smiled. Not fully, not widely. Just a faint, satisfied curl of the lips, gone as quickly as it appeared. But Emily saw it. The effect was immediate. She froze entirely, not moving, not breathing, not blinking. Her eyes widened, filling with a shine that wasn't quite tears yet, but close. Her hands tightened around the shoes until Daniels could see the faint tremor running through her arms. And that was when Rex let out his first true growl. It rolled out of him slow and deep, a sound that reached into the quiet courtroom and snapped the tension like a thread pulled too tight. A few heads turned. A bailiff raised an eyebrow. Daniels placed a firmer hand on Rex's shoulder, but he didn't scold him, because he knew that growl. It wasn't aggression. It was the sound Rex made when he sensed danger, when someone vulnerable was afraid, when something invisible in the room shifted into the wrong place. Daniels looked at Emily again. She wasn't just nervous. She wasn't just scared. She was terrified of that man. And for the first time that morning, Daniels felt something cold slide down his spine. Something told him that whatever this child knew, whatever she'd seen, had followed her into this courtroom, and the storm waiting behind her trembling hands was about to break. For a moment, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Emily sat stiffly in the witness chair, her legs dangling, her shoes still clutched tightly in her small hands. Daniels watched her from the side of the room, Rex's head resting against his knee, but eyes locked, unwavering, on the trembling girl. The judge cleared his throat softly, a gentle sound, kind even. But to Emily, it struck like the crack of thunder. "Emily," the judge began, voice steady, "do you remember what you told the officers last week?" "It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe here. You can speak to me." Safe. The word hung in the air like a fragile promise, but it didn't reach Emily. It couldn't. Not when her gaze kept flicking, involuntarily, toward the defendant. The man whose cold eyes never seemed to blink. Emily's breath came shallow. Her fingers tightened around her shoes again. Her shoulders started to tremble. Daniels noticed first, then Rex. The dog pushed up onto his elbows, ears high, spine straightening, a subtle warning posture, but unmistakable. The judge spoke again, softer this time. "It's all right, Emily. Tell us what you saw that night." Something inside the girl snapped. Her chest heaved. Her eyes widened with sudden panic, pure, raw, uncontrollable. Her hands shook so violently, Daniels thought the shoes might fall to the floor again. Instead, Emily did something no one expected. She yanked the shoes apart in her hands, lifted them, and with a shaky, frightened cry that came out more like a gumb, threw them at the judge's bench. Time fractured. The shoes hit the polished wood with a soft thud, thud, one bouncing before landing near the edge, the other sliding to a stop directly in front of the gavel. A wave of shocked gasps rippled across the courtroom like a sudden gust of wind. "Time 900 flems," someone whispered. "What is she doing?" Another hissed. "Did she just—" But all of it was drowned out by the sound that followed. Rex exploded. Not wildly, not aggressively, but with the precise fury of a trained police dog hitting a full alert. He lunged forward, bark after bark slicing through the courtroom like sharp cracks of thunder. Rapid, controlled, urgent. His muscles tightened, his body leaned toward the front of the room as if something electric had jolted through him the instant those shoes hit the judge's bench. Daniels jerked up from his seat. "Rex! Hey, Rex!" He grabbed the leash, steadying the dog even as the barking continued in disciplined bursts. "Talk to me, boy. What is it?" Rex didn't break focus. His nose twitched, his ears pinned forward, his eyes fixed intensely on the scattered shoes. Not on Emily, not on the defendant, not on the judge. The shoes. The judge, startled, leaned back slightly. The bailiff stepped forward, unsure whether to intervene or let the officer handle it. "Officer Daniels," the judge called, voice raised over Rex's urgent barking. "Control your K9. "I'm trying, Your Honor," Daniels shouted back, pulling gently but firmly. "But if he's alerting, this is serious." Rex barked again, a sharper sound, then lunged just enough to make Daniels step forward with him. The courtroom froze, because Rex wasn't just barking. He was warning. Daniels's expression changed. He knew that bark. K9 units had different alerts: narcotics, explosives, accelerants, even human remains. But Rex's alert now, this one was for chemical trace detection. "Rex," Daniels said, breath tight. "You found something, didn't you?" The dog responded with a deep, vibrating growl, then jerked his nose toward the shoes again, pawing the air as if begging to reach them. "Time 12 months." "Sir," Daniels addressed the judge, "permission to approach?" The judge hesitated, only for a second, then nodded. "Granted." With slow, careful steps, Daniels allowed Rex to approach the shoes under strict control. The dog lowered his snout, inhaled sharply, then scratched the floor twice in front of the bench. Deliberate, practiced, unmistakable. Rex had found a trace, a rare one. Daniels's heart dropped into his stomach. Before he could speak, a small voice broke through the stunned silence. Wait!" Emily. She stood in the witness box, hands trembling, her chest rising and falling in quick, frightened breaths. Her eyes weren't on the judge. They weren't on Daniels. They weren't even on Rex. They were locked on the defendant. "He said," her voice cracked, "he said he never went there." The entire courtroom leaned in without realizing they did. Emily swallowed hard, tears gathering but not yet falling. "But that dirt! The dirt on my shoes!" Rex barked once, loud and sharp, as if urging her on. "Came from his truck!" It felt like the floor shifted beneath everyone. The judge blinked, stunned. The attorneys froze mid-breath. A reporter's pen dropped to the floor, echoing faintly through the room. The defendant jerked back as though struck. A flicker of anger, shock, fear crossed his face before he masked it behind something colder. But it was too late. Rex was staring directly at him now, hackles rising in a quiet, controlled line down his spine. Daniels's blood ran cold. The judge slowly leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he peered at the shoes, at the faint film of grayish soil clinging to the ridges of the soles. "What kind of dirt is that?" the judge asked hoarsely. Daniels inhaled sharply. "Your Honor, Rex only alerts to specific trace compounds. Rare ones." Rex scratched again, harder this time. The judge exhaled, realization dawning, alarming, undeniable. And then, silence. Not calm, not peaceful, but electric. A charged silence that filled the room with heavy, trembling anticipation. The kind that only comes when the first real crack in a lie finally appears. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, shaking. But she lifted her chin, just a little, enough to show she had spoken a truth she'd been terrified to carry. Daniels looked at the shoes. Rex stared at the defendant. And the judge, hand hovering above the bench, whispered the words that shifted the entire direction of the case. "This changes everything." The courtroom had fallen into a strange kind of hush, not silence, not noise, but something in between. a murmuring tension that pulsed like a heartbeat just beneath the walls. Emily's revelation hung thick in the air, filling every corner of the room with a heavy electric charge. Daniels knelt beside the judge's bench, carefully lifting Emily's shoes. They were small, light, almost delicate, but the soil clinging to the soles felt weighty, significant. A smear of grayish metallic dust coated the edge of the heel, catching the light in a way that made Daniels's stomach tighten. He had seen soil like this before, years ago, at a place no civilian, and certainly no child, should ever have been near: the restricted mine. The same mine the defendant had sworn, publicly and repeatedly, he had never stepped foot near. "Rex," Daniels said quietly, "show me again." The German shepherd stood poised, perfectly still except for the slight twitch of his nostrils as he inhaled the scent radiating from the shoes. A moment passed, then another, and then Rex lowered into his trained posture. Precision alert. Not the general bark, not the warning growl. This was different. He stiffened his body, planted his front paw, and tapped the floor twice, sharp, deliberate, certain. Then he touched his nose to the heel of the shoe and inhaled deeply before tapping again. The same sequence he used in field operations when identifying rare mineral traces. Daniels felt a cold shiver run through his arms. "Your Honor," he said, voice firm, "Rex is confirming the presence of mineral compounds from the restricted mine." A wave of startled whispers rippled through the gallery. The judge leaned forward, his expression tight. "Are you certain, Officer Daniels?" "Rex has never been wrong about this trace," Daniels replied. "Not once." Emily sat in the witness box, small hands gripping the wooden edge so tightly her fingers had turned white. She didn't speak. Not yet. Her breath came quick, uneven, like each inhale hurt. Daniels softened his tone. "Emily, honey, can you tell us how your shoes ended up with this dirt on them?" Her lips trembled. For a moment she looked like she might shut down again. But then her gaze drifted toward Rex, steady, loyal, watching her with those warm amber eyes. And something in her face loosened. She nodded, just barely. The courtroom quieted instantly. Emily swallowed hard. I didn't mean to go near his truck." She pointed with a small, trembling hand toward the defendant. "I didn't even know whose it was." Daniels listened carefully. The judge leaned closer. Emily continued, voice thin but truthful. "I was looking for my backpack. It fell near the parking lot. When I went to pick it up, my shoes slipped off because the laces were loose. They rolled under his truck." She paused, the memory dragging fear up from somewhere deep inside her. "I crawled a little bit to get them back, and then I saw—" Her breath faltered. "I saw the dirt all over the tires, the same dirt from the mine. My dad used to work there. I know what it looks like." Daniels's chest tightened. Rex whined softly, sensing her fear. Emily blinked, tears finally pooling. "I didn't want to lie, but he—" She froze, because the defendant was staring at her again, his eyes sharp, cold, needle-like. A slow smile crept across his lips, the kind that wasn't really a smile at all, but a warning hidden behind teeth. A smirk, subtle, sarcastic, dangerous. It was enough. That tiny, evil curl of the lips was all Rex needed. The German shepherd snapped from alert posture into a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the bench. His muscles tensed beneath his coat as he lunged forward on the leash, restrained only because Daniels had anticipated the movement and tightened his grip just in time. The defendant jumped, flinching backward so hard his chair scraped loudly across the floor. Gasps erupted around the room. Someone shouted, "What's wrong with that dog?" But Daniels didn't shout. He already knew. Rex had reacted exactly the way he did when a suspect revealed emotional intent. Aggression. Threat. The dangerous psychological shift that dogs could sense long before humans ever noticed. The defendant's mask had slipped. Just a fraction. Just enough. But Rex saw it. Rex always saw it. Daniels tugged the leash firmly. "Rex, heel!" The dog obeyed, but reluctantly. His body still coiled like a spring, teeth bared just enough to send a clear message. Emily flinched violently at the sudden noise. Her breaths turned to sharp, panicked gasps. Her shoulders curled inward as she trembled uncontrollably. Daniels turned immediately. "Emily, hey, it's all right." But Rex reached her first. The German shepherd stepped slowly toward the witness box, pausing with every movement, as if to show he meant no harm, just comfort. He lowered his head gently onto the edge of the stand, nudging her elbow with the softest pressure. Emily's shaking eased, just a little. Rex pressed closer, resting his head against her leg. The girl's fingers reached out with hesitant, trembling movement, then settled into his fur. Her shoulders dropped, releasing a breath she'd been holding for too long. Her voice came out in a whisper, fragile, small, but clear. "He smirked at me because he thinks I'm scared." Daniels swallowed hard. He turned, looking directly at the man sitting at the defense table, the man whose eyes were now darting away, face pale, jaw tight. For the first time since the hearing began, the defendant looked afraid, and the courtroom finally understood what Daniels, Rex, and Emily already knew. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't just a case. Something dangerous was hiding beneath that man's practiced lies, and Rex, with his instinct sharper than human intuition, had just exposed the first real crack. The courtroom emptied during recess, but the tension didn't leave with the people. It clung to the walls, soaked into the wooden benches, lingered in every corner like a warning that refused to be ignored. Daniels stood in the aisle long after the judge left, replaying the scene again and again in his mind. The smirk, Rex's lunging alert, Emily shaking uncontrollably, and the unmistakable scent trace on her shoes. None of it added up. None of it should have added up. Yet everything pointed in one direction. The defendant had been lying. And not just lying, covering something deeper, something that had already reached into the life of a child. Daniels glanced down at Rex, who remained fixed toward the hallway where the defendant had exited, body tense, ears high. A sign he wasn't done. A sign the danger wasn't either. "All right, boy," Daniels murmured. "Let's get to work." Rex responded with a low, determined bark, the kind that meant he was ready. Daniels moved quickly. He knew he didn't have much time before the recess ended. So he headed straight to the courthouse security office. A bored-looking guard raised an eyebrow as Daniels flashed his badge. "Need access to camera footage from the parking lot," Daniels said, tone firm. "What time frame?" "Last 72 hours. The guard hesitated but nodded. Daniels's reputation carried weight. Within minutes, they were scrolling through time-stamped footage, fast-forwarding through hours of mundane comings and goings. Daniel's eyes scanned the screen relentlessly. Cars in, cars out. Officers arriving, staff leaving, a janitor on a cigarette break. Nothing. Then, "Hold up." He pointed sharply at the screen. The defendant's truck. It rolled into frame at 2:14 a.m., the night before the hearing. Headlights off, moving slowly, too slowly. A second vehicle followed, unmarked, tinted windows. "Who the hell comes here at 2 in the morning?" the guard muttered. Daniels leaned closer. Two figures exited the unmarked car, both wearing uniforms, both walking with the kind of familiarity that came from knowing exactly what they were doing. Daniels felt the hairs on his arms rise. Rex growled under his breath, eyeing the screen as if he could smell the deception through the glass. Daniels asked quietly, "You recognize either of them?" The guard squinted. "The tall one looks like Officer Trent. Works nights. Don't know the other." Trent. Daniels knew that name. A patrol officer who often acted too friendly with the defendant during past hearings. He'd seen Trent laugh with him in the hallway, too casually, too comfortably. A connection. A bad one. Daniels nodded. "Rewind 30 seconds. The footage rolled back, then played again. Both officers shook hands with the defendant, but not the normal kind. A long grip, a close whisper. A body language exchange Daniels recognized from undercover operations. Complicity. Daniels exhaled, the pieces sliding quietly, dangerously, into place. "Print that frame," he ordered. All three men. The guard hesitated, then hit the print button. Daniels didn't stop there. He checked logbooks, interrogated a cleaning staff member who saw Trent snooping around early that morning, pulled door swipe records, and that was where the second crack opened. Trent's ID card had pinged at the restricted evidence storage room at 4:12 a.m. "What the hell were you doing in there, Trent?" Daniels murmured. A chill crept through him. Rex's ears perked again, as if sensing the shift. Daniels wasn't officially investigating, not yet, but something deep in his gut screamed that he was stepping into the middle of a far-reaching lie. And Emily might be the key the defendant and Trent were desperate to hide. Daniels headed to the officer's locker area, Rex's footsteps echoing beside him. The room was empty. Every officer still on break, lingering around vending machines or outside smoking. Perfect. Daniels walked slowly down the row of lockers, Rex following close, sniffing the floor, the metal doors, even the air. They passed one locker, then another, then another. Then Rex froze. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He went silent, perfectly still, the way he did when his instincts screamed, "Here." His nose dropped to the base of the locker, inhaling sharply. "Which one is it, boy?" Daniels asked under his breath. Rex lifted his head and tapped the metal door with his paw. "Locker 27. Trent's locker." Daniels's pulse quickened. "Rex, are you sure?" The dog tapped again, harder this time. Precision. Daniels looked around, no one in sight, then produced a master override key. His hand hovered at the lock for a second. Just one. But that single second was enough for every worst-case scenario to flash through his mind. If he found nothing, he'd look paranoid, overreaching, possibly suspended. But if he did find something, he turned the key. The locker clicked open, and the truth fell out like a punch to the chest. A pair of boots sat at the bottom of the locker, the soles caked with the same rare, grayish mineral dust from the restricted mine. Time 100 mom. Daniels's throat tightened. No, no, no. But Rex wasn't done. The German shepherd nosed deeper into the locker, pushing aside a folded uniform until something small and pale blue slipped into view. A shoelace. A single, frayed child's shoelace. Daniels froze. His breath stuck in his chest. His vision tunneled. It wasn't just a shoelace. It was Emily's. He remembered the detail clearly. She had one shoelace slightly torn, the other missing completely. The one in Trent's locker matched the color, the fray, the length, everything. "Oh, God," Daniels whispered. Rex nudged his hand gently, sensing the rising panic. Daniels stared at the shoelace, his blood turning cold. If Trent had Emily's shoelace, if Trent was helping the defendant, if the two had visited the restricted mine together, then Emily wasn't just a witness. She was a target. Rex pressed his head into Daniel's side, slow, firm, grounding him. Urgency filled the dog's eyes. Daniels swallowed hard. "Okay, boy. Okay," he whispered, gripping Rex's collar. "We're in deeper than we thought. And the girl, she's not safe." Rex nudged him again, harder this time, as if saying, "Then move. Now." And Daniels knew with absolute certainty that whatever was happening, it had only just begun. The courtroom emptied during recess, but the tension didn't leave with the people. It clung to the walls, soaked into the wooden benches, lingered in every corner like a warning that refused to be ignored. Daniels stood in the aisle long after the judge left, replaying the scene again and again in his mind. The smirk, Rex's lunging alert, Emily shaking uncontrollably, and the unmistakable scent trace on her shoes. None of it added up. None of it should have added up. Yet everything pointed in one direction. The defendant had been lying. And not just lying, it was covering something deeper, something that had already reached into the life of a child. Daniels glanced down at Rex, who remained fixed toward the hallway where the defendant had exited, body tense, ears high. A sign he wasn't done. A sign the danger wasn't either. "All right, boy," Daniels murmured. "Let's get to work." Rex responded with a low, determined bark, the kind that meant he was ready. Daniels moved quickly. He knew he didn't have much time before the recess ended, so he headed straight to the courthouse security office. A bored-looking guard raised an eyebrow as Daniels flashed his badge. "Need access to camera footage from the parking lot," Daniels said, tone firm. "What time frame?" "Last 72 hours. The guard hesitated, then nodded. Daniels's reputation carried weight. Within minutes, they were scrolling through time-stamped footage, fast-forwarding through hours of mundane comings and goings. Daniel's eyes scanned the screen relentlessly. Cars in, cars out, officers arriving, staff leaving, a janitor on a cigarette break. Nothing. Then, "Hold up." He pointed sharply at the screen. The defendant's truck. It rolled into frame at 2:14 a.m., The night before the hearing, headlights off, moving slowly, too slowly. A second vehicle followed, unmarked, tinted windows. "Who the hell comes here at 2 in the morning?" the guard muttered. Daniels leaned closer. Two figures exited the unmarked car, both wearing uniforms, both moving with the kind of familiarity that came from knowing exactly what they were doing. Daniels felt the hairs on his arms rise. Rex growled under his breath, eyeing the screen as if he could smell the deception through the glass. Daniels asked quietly, "You recognize either of them?" The guard squinted. "The tall one looks like Officer Trent. Works nights. Don't know the other." Trent. Daniels knew that name. A patrol officer who often acted too friendly with the defendant during past hearings. He'd seen Trent laugh with him in the hallway, too casually, too comfortably. A connection. A bad one. "Rewind 30 seconds, Daniels said. The footage rolled back, then played again. Both officers shook hands with the defendant, but not the normal kind. A long grip, a close whisper, a body language exchange Daniels recognized from undercover operations. Complicity. Daniels exhaled, the pieces sliding quietly, dangerously into place. "Print that frame," he ordered. "All three men." The guard hesitated, then hit the print button. Daniels didn't stop there. He checked logbooks, interrogated a cleaning staff member who saw Trent snooping around early that morning, pulled door swipe records, and that was where the second crack opened. Trent's ID card had pinged at the restricted evidence storage room at 4:12 a.m. "What the hell were you doing in there, Trent?" Daniels murmured. A chill crept through him. Rex's ears perked again, as if sensing the shift. Daniels wasn't officially investigating, not yet, but something deep in his gut screamed that he was stepping into the middle of a far-reaching lie. And Emily might be the key the defendant and Trent were desperate to hide. Daniels headed to the officer's locker area, Rex's footsteps echoing beside him. The room was empty. Every officer still on break, lingering around vending machines or outside smoking. Perfect. Daniels walked slowly down the row of lockers, Rex following close, sniffing the floor, the metal doors, even the air. They passed one locker, then another, then another. Then Rex froze. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He went perfectly still, the way he did when his instincts whispered, "Here." His nose dropped to the base of the locker, inhaling sharply. "Which one is it, boy?" Daniels whispered. Rex lifted his head and tapped the metal door with his paw. "Locker 27. Trent's locker." Daniels's pulse quickened. "Rex, are you sure?" The dog tapped again, harder this time. Precision. Daniels looked around, no one in sight, then produced a master override key. His hand hovered at the lock for a single second, just enough time for every worst-case scenario to flash through his mind. If he found nothing, he'd look paranoid, overreaching, possibly suspended. But if he did find something, he turned the key. The locker clicked open, and the truth fell out like a punch to the chest. A pair of boots sat at the bottom, the soles caked with the same rare, grayish mineral dust from the restricted mine. Daniels's throat tightened. No, no, no. But Rex wasn't done. The shepherd nosed deeper into the locker, pushing aside a folded uniform until something pale blue slipped into view. A shoelace. A single, frayed, child's shoelace. Daniels froze. His breath stuck in his chest. His vision tunneled. It wasn't just a shoelace. It was Emily's. He remembered the detail clearly. One shoelace slightly torn, the other missing completely. The one in Trent's locker matched the color, the fray, the length, everything. "Oh, God," Daniels whispered. Rex nudged his hand gently, sensing the rising panic. Daniels stared at the shoelace, his blood turning cold. If Trent had Emily's shoelace, if Trent was helping the defendant, if the two had visited the restricted mine together, then Emily wasn't just a witness. She was a target. Rex pressed his head into Daniels's side, slow, firm, grounding him. Urgency filled the dog's eyes. Daniels swallowed hard. "Okay, boy. Okay," he whispered, gripping Rex's collar. "We're in deeper than we thought. And the girl, she's not safe." Rex nudged him again, harder this time, as if saying, "Then move, now." And Daniels knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever was happening, it had only just begun. The courthouse hallway was quieter than the courtroom, but the silence there felt even heavier. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above, humming a faint, lonely tune. A stack of chairs leaned against the wall, and a coffee machine dripped slowly in the corner. Small, mundane details that somehow made the atmosphere feel colder, more real. Daniels pushed open the door to the small private conference room assigned for sensitive witnesses. It was hardly more than a narrow space with a wooden table, 2 chairs, and a single window overlooking the parking lot. But at that moment, it felt like the safest place in the building. Emily sat at the table, knees pulled tightly to her chest, her arms wrapped around them like a barrier. Her mother waited just outside at Daniels's request, giving the girl space to speak freely. Emily's eyes were swollen, her cheeks blotchy, and a thin trail of dried tears clung beneath each eye. Rex walked in first. Not Daniels. Rex. The German shepherd padded across the carpet, his nails barely clicking, his head low, his posture soft. A gentle approach he reserved for victims, especially children. He stopped beside Emily and waited. Emily blinked at him, her mouth trembling. Daniels watched quietly from the doorway. Rex tilted his head and stepped closer. Emily's breath broke, a small, fragile sound, and she reached out, touching the dog's fur as if making sure he was real. The moment her fingers sank into his coat, her face crumpled. The first sob escaped like a gasp for air after drowning. Daniels immediately closed the door behind them and knelt beside her chair. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispered. "You're safe. You can talk to us now." Emily shook her head, tears spilling again. "No. No, I'm not." Her voice came in broken pieces, each word fighting through fear. "He said he'd find me. He said he knows where I live." Daniels felt the muscles in his jaw tighten. Rex gently nudged Emily's hand, encouraging her to keep talking. Daniels pulled a chair close and sat eye-level with her, his tone soft but steady. "Tell me what happened," he said. "All of it. We'll protect you." Emily sniffled, her breath shaking as she tried to speak. I wasn't supposed to go near the mine." her fingers twisted in Rex's fur, clinging to courage. My dad always said it was too dangerous, but I wanted to take a shortcut home from school. I thought it would be faster. Daniels nodded slowly, letting her set the pace. Emily wiped her nose on her sleeve. I didn't know he would be there. I didn't know he'd see me. Who, sweetheart? Daniels asked. Though he already knew. Her eyes lifted, full of terror and memory. Him. The defendant. The name didn't need to be spoken. Emily took a shaky breath. He stopped his truck, right in front of me. He got out and asked what I was doing there. Her voice wavered. He said kids shouldn't be wandering around. He grabbed my arm, not hard at first, but then he pulled me closer. Daniel's stomach clenched. Rex pressed closer to her leg, sensing her spiraling fear. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. He told me. If I told anyone I saw him there, he'd come for me. He said no one would believe a kid anyway. Daniels felt anger burn hot beneath his ribs, but he kept it contained. What did you do? He asked gently. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. I ran. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I ran as fast as I could. I tripped near the construction site, the one with the orange cones, and my shoe came off. That's when the lace ripped. Daniels's breath caught. The shoelace. In Trent's locker. Emily kept going, shaken, but determined to speak while Rex kept his warmth pressed against her. I hid behind a pile of boards, she said. I heard him yelling. He was looking for me. I could hear his steps on the gravel. She hugged herself tighter. I held my breath until my chest hurt. Rex lifted his head and pressed his nose gently against her wrist, sensing her rising panic. When he couldn't find me, Emily whispered, he kicked something. I heard metal hit metal. Then he got back in his truck. I didn't move for a long time. Daniel swallowed hard. Emily, why didn't you tell someone sooner? Her eyes filled with fear again. Because 2 days later, I saw him again. At the grocery store. He walked right past me, with a police officer. Daniels's heart dropped. Trent. He smiled at me, Emily whispered, like nothing happened. Like I didn't matter. I didn't think anyone would believe me, because he had a police officer with him. And he saw me. He saw I recognized him. Daniels closed his eyes, steadying himself, then opened them with sharp clarity. He leaned closer, voice low. Emily, listen to me. I believe you. Rex believes you. And we're going to protect you. He's not going to hurt you again. I promise. Rex stepped in front of Emily, not beside her, not behind her, but directly in front, blocking her from the door as if shielding her with his entire body. Then, in the gentlest movement Daniels had ever seen, Rex lifted his head and licked the back of Emily's trembling hand. The girl broke. She collapsed forward, burying her face into Rex's thick fur, sobbing until her entire body shook. But this time, her sobs weren't silent, terrified ones. They were releasing, unloading. The sobs of a child who finally wasn't carrying the secret alone. Rex stayed perfectly still, a living shield, letting her cry into him as though he existed solely for this moment. Daniels rested a hand on Rex's back and another on Emily's shoulder, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "You did the right thing telling us," he said softly. "And I swear to you, I won't let anything happen to you." Emily clung to Rex, nodding into his fur, trusting the one creature she instinctively knew could save her. And Daniels meant every word, with a fierceness that would change everything in what came next. The hallway outside the private witness room felt colder than before, colder than a courthouse ever should. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the empty corridor. Daniels stepped out quietly, closing the door behind him so Emily could rest inside with her mother, and Rex standing guard like a silent sentinel. Daniels rubbed his temples. His pulse still hadn't settled since hearing Emily's full story. It replayed in his mind on a loop. Her running, hiding, crying, the shoelace tearing, Trent's name hovering unspoken but undeniable. He didn't want to confront Trent yet. But he had no choice. He found the officer standing near the stairwell, leaning against the wall with a cup of coffee in his hand, as if this were any other day, as if he weren't entangled in a lie that could shatter a child's life. "Trent," Daniels said. The officer looked up, a lazy smile already forming. "Daniels, you look pale. Too much courtroom drama?" Daniels ignored the jab. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Why were you at the restricted mine with the defendant at 2 in the morning?" Trent didn't flinch, which somehow made it worse. Instead, he took a slow sip of coffee, eyes half-lidded. "You sure you want to start asking questions like that, Daniels?" Daniels clenched his jaw. "I saw the footage. You shook hands with him, whispered something." Trent's smirk deepened, though his eyes hardened. "You know, most people mind their business unless they want trouble." "That kid in the witness room isn't trouble," Daniels snapped. "She's terrified, and she wasn't lying." Trent's expression shifted, the first crack in the mask. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully. This case? It's bigger than you imagine. Bigger than me. Bigger than that little brat whining in there." Daniel's blood went cold. "Don't call her that," he said, voice low and dangerous. Trent didn't stop. "You think this is about some dirt? Some shoelace? There are people involved here you don't want to piss off." "And you're one of them?" Daniels shot back. Trent shrugged, smugness barely contained. "I'm just saying, keep your nose out of places it doesn't belong. Or else." The threat wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Daniels stepped forward, closing the distance until he was inches from Trent. "She's 8 years old, scared out of her mind. And you're helping the guy who threatened her?" His voice shook with restrained fury. "If you're involved—" "You'll what?" Trent whispered. "Arrest me? Report me?" He chuckled. "No one will believe you. Not against me." Daniels's fists curled. "Be careful," Trent added, tone oily and slow. "You've got a good career, a good dog. Would be a shame if you lost both." That did it. Daniels didn't even realize he'd stepped forward until Trent's back hit the wall. "If you ever mention Rex again." But he didn't finish, because the stairwell door opened, and Rex walked out. He had pushed past Emily's mother, following the tension like a living censor. Daniels hadn't called him, but Rex always knew when he was needed. The dog walked toward them, ears high, tail stiff, muscles coiled. Trent scoffed. "Great, the mutt's here." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Watch your mouth." But Trent wasn't fazed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. Official-looking, stamped with a department seal. "I was hoping to do this later," Trent said, voice dripping with mock sympathy. "But given your little tantrum, guess now's a good time." He unfolded the paper slowly, holding it out with 2 fingers. "Order from the captain. Rex is being reassigned to my unit." Daniels froze. "No," he whispered. Trent's grin widened. "Effective immediately. I'll take him now." Rex stepped closer to Daniels, sensing the shift, sensing the danger. Daniels snatched the paper and scanned it. His heart hammered. It looked official, but something was wrong. The signature, the formatting, the date. "This is fake," Daniels said. Trent stepped forward. "Doesn't matter. It'll pass long enough for me to take him." Daniels moved in front of Rex. "You're not laying a hand on him." "Oh, I think I am," Trent said, grabbing for Rex's leash. And in an instant, Rex reacted. Not violently, not recklessly, but with the silent, controlled fury of a dog who knew exactly what was happening. He stepped between Daniels and Trent, positioning himself like a shield. His tail went low, legs braced, chest forward. His lips pulled back just enough to show teeth, not in wild aggression, but intentional warning. A single growl rumbled through his throat. Deep, steady, final. The kind of growl that made grown men take a step back. Trent's bravado faltered. He jerked his hand away. "What the—" "Control your dog!" Daniels was shaking. From anger. From relief. From the sharp realization that they were both in danger now. He knelt beside Rex, placing a firm hand on the dog's chest. "Good boy," Daniels whispered, voice thick. "Good boy. Stay with me." Rex glanced at him, then back at Trent. The message clear. Try it. Just try it. Daniels rose slowly. "You forge one more document. You touch Rex again. You go near that girl. And I'll make sure the whole department knows what you've been doing." Trent's face twisted with rage, but beneath it, fear, because he now understood that the 2 standing in front of him weren't backing down. Not Daniels, not Rex. Trent tossed the fake order on the floor and leaned close enough for Daniels to smell the bitterness on his breath. "You have no idea what you've started," he hissed. "No idea who you're messing with." Then he turned sharply and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Daniels exhaled slowly. Rex pressed his head into Daniels' leg. Steady. Loyal. Daniels rested a hand on his fur. "We're in this together, partner," he whispered. "No one's taking you from me. Ever." Rex's steady eyes said everything. "Then let's finish this." For her. Night settled over the outskirts of town like a thick, suffocating blanket. The sky was moonless, the kind of deep black that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. Wind whipped through the abandoned structures near the old mine, carrying the metallic scent of earth, cold, heavy, unsettling. Daniels stepped out of the patrol SUV, boots crunching on gravel. He zipped up his jacket tighter as a gust of icy air sliced across the open field. The restricted mine loomed ahead like a giant mouth carved into the hillside, its machinery rusted and skeletal against the night. Warning signs flapped in the wind, creaking with a rhythmic, mournful sound. Rex jumped down beside him, landing lightly despite the tension vibrating through his frame. His ears were high, his breath visible in small, warm puffs against the cold air. Daniels reached into his pocket and pulled out the small evidence bag. Inside it, Emily's missing shoelace, found in Trent's locker. The final piece of the puzzle that now pointed straight to the mine. "Rex," Daniels said softly, kneeling to show him the bag. "This is what you're tracking tonight. You know what to do." Rex sniffed the plastic, tail lowering in focus. His pupils sharpened, his stance stiffened, and in an instant, he turned toward the dark mouth of the mine. "All right, partner," Daniels whispered, fear and determination merging in his voice. "Lead the way." The wind howled across the barren clearing as they approached the gate. The lock had been broken, recently. A rusted chain dangled uselessly from the fence, clanking in the shifting air. Daniels cursed under his breath. Someone had been here. Recently. Deliberately. Rex growled low, the sound nearly swallowed by the wind, but felt through the leash. "It's okay, boy. I'm right behind you." They crossed the threshold. The darkness swallowed them, whole. Daniels turned on his flashlight. The beam cut through the black, illuminating disturbed dirt, uneven footprints, scraps of fabric. Gravel shifted beneath their feet, echoing ominously against the cavern walls. Rex lowered his nose to the ground, inhaling deeply, searching, sorting, decoding the scents like puzzle pieces. "Find it, Rex," Daniels whispered. "Find what they're hiding." The dog proceeded slowly at first, weaving left and right, sniffing, pausing, adjusting. He stopped at a decaying wooden beam, sniffed again, then darted forward, pulling Daniels with him. Something had caught his attention. Something strong. Something wrong. Rex picked up speed, his movements laser-focused as he followed an invisible path into the deeper, restricted section. The cold intensified. The air grew heavier, smelling of dust, rust, and long-buried secrets. Daniels's heart hammered as they passed a collapsed section of roof supported by a single failing beam. Dripping water echoed in the cavern like tiny, sinister footsteps. Rex slowed, then stopped. His body stiffened, tail rising. He inhaled sharply, a deep, powerful breath. And then, precision alert. Rex pawed the ground twice, then jerked his head toward a pile of rocks stacked unnaturally against the wall. Daniels felt a jolt of adrenaline. "That's it? You sure, boy?" Rex tapped the rocks again. Harder this time. Claws scraping stone. Daniels holstered his flashlight, grabbed the rocks, and began pulling them away with shaking hands. 1 stone, 2 stones, a dozen more. Until a hidden compartment appeared, a wooden crate, half buried in dirt and dust. Daniel's breath hitched. "Oh, God." He dragged it out and pried it open with his knife. The hinges groaned like something, awakening from a long sleep. Inside, heavy tools, bags of illegal mining material, maps of the restricted tunnels, a ledger full of names, too many names, and worst of all, a black mask, the same one described by Emily, the same shape she had drawn with trembling hands. Daniels lifted it carefully, turning it under the flashlight. The inside lining, smudged with fingerprints, tiny ones, child-sized ones, Emily's. Daniels's stomach twisted as the truth crashed over him. The defendant hadn't just been at the mine. He had used Emily's fear to silence her, and he had been hiding evidence in the one place no one was supposed to return to. Behind him, Rex growled deep, protective, angry, as if sensing the weight of the discovery. Daniels grabbed his radio, hands trembling. "Dispatch, this is Officer Daniels," he said, voice unsteady. "I need immediate backup at the old mine. We found the stash. We found the tools. And," he looked at the mask again, "and we found the proof. 100%. Rex barked sharply, affirming, insistent. Another gust of wind roared through the mine, slamming into the walls and kicking dust into the air. The sound echoed like the earth itself was exhaling. Daniels stepped back from the crate, holding the mask tightly. Behind him, Rex suddenly turned, ears high, muscles tense. Daniels whipped around. "What is it, boy?" Rex stared into the darkness beyond the tunnel, unblinking, alert, warning, as if he sensed something, or someone, still inside. Daniels swallowed hard. "Okay," he whispered to Rex. "Backup's coming. Just stay with me." Rex moved closer, brushing against his leg. Daniels tightened his tassos, grip on the mask, heart pounding, realizing that this discovery was only the beginning. The wind howled again, and somewhere deep in the darkness of the mine, something shifted. The courtroom felt different the next morning. Heavier, tighter, charged with an invisible electricity that crackled in the air long before the judge took the bench. The gallery was filled to capacity. Whispers rippled across the room like restless waves. Everyone sensed something monumental was about to happen. Daniels stood beside Rex, who sat tall and alert, ears perked, eyes sharp. He could feel the dog's energy vibrating like a coiled spring, a guardian poised on the edge of action. On the prosecution table lay the evidence they'd uncovered at the mine. The tools, the ledger, the contraband, and the mask. The black, terrifying mask smeared with a faint fingerprint only a child could leave. Emily's fingerprint. The defendant sat several feet away, but his usual confident facade had begun to crack. His jaw clenched. His knee bounced rapidly. His eyes darted left and right with a predator's desperation. He thought he had buried everything. He thought the mine was forgotten. He thought the child was too scared to speak. But now, everything was unraveling. The judge entered, face stern, tone clipped and serious. "Let's continue," he said, striking the gavel. The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor," she began, voice resonant and steady, "new evidence has been recovered that directly ties the defendant to the restricted mine and confirms witness testimony." Daniels stepped forward and placed the crate on the evidence table. Murmurs exploded across the gallery. The prosecutor lifted the mask carefully with gloved hands. "This was found hidden in the mine," she said plainly, "where the defendant claimed he had never been." She turned toward him. He looked away. "And on the inside," she continued, "we discovered partial fingerprints belonging to the minor witness, Emily." Gasps echoed through the room. Emily, seated near Daniels, with her mother beside her, shrank into her chair. Rex noticed instantly. The shepherd scooted closer, positioning himself between her and the defendant's line of sight. The prosecutor continued, unwavering. "This print corroborates the child's testimony." The defendant's jaw twitched. A vein pulsed at his temple. He was losing control. Daniels saw it first. Rex sensed it next. The energy shifted, darkened, thickened, like the air before a violent storm. The prosecutor raised her voice slightly. Additionally, the same rare mineral compound was detected on the defendant's boots and on items belonging to Officer Trent. Officer Trent is now in custody pending investigation. Rex growled low, a warning. The judge leaned forward. Sir, I strongly advise, but it was too late. The defendant exploded upward, slamming his hands on the table. This is a setup, he roared. You're all idiots if you think that little brat is telling the truth. Emily flinched so violently, her chair rattled. Rex stood instantly, hackles rising like a cresting wave. The judge pounded his gavel. Order! Sit down immediately! But the defendant was beyond reason. His voice dripped with venom. She should have stayed quiet. His eyes locked on Emily. I told her to keep her mouth shut. The courtroom erupted. Emily whimpered, a tiny broken sound that sliced through Daniels like a blade. And then, the defendant lunged. Not at the judge, not at the prosecutor, but directly at Emily. His chair toppled behind him with a violent crash as he barreled forward, face twisted with rage. Daniels shouted, Rex! But Rex didn't need the command. The German shepherd launched, a streak of muscle, instinct, and unwavering loyalty. His paws hit the floor with explosive force, propelling him across the courtroom in a single, stunning leap. He struck the defendant mid-charge. The impact thundered through the room. Rex landed in front of Emily, placing his entire body between the child and the danger. His snarl tore through the air, fierce, guttural, undeniable. The defendant stumbled backward, crashing onto the floor as Rex's growls rolled over him like thunder. Bailiffs lunged in, wrestling the man down as he kicked and screamed. She should have stayed quiet, he shrieked. She should have stayed quiet! Rex barked so sharply, one of the reporters jumped. The judge roared, Get him out of my courtroom! Officers dragged the defendant away as he continued thrashing, shouting, unraveling into something barely human. Daniels rushed to Emily. She had folded into herself, tears streaming down her cheeks, her breaths sharp and broken. Rex turned from the chaos and pressed against her, nudging his head into her chest. Emily threw her arms around his neck, sobbing hard. I was so scared, she cried. I thought he was going to... Daniels knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on Rex's back. He's never going to touch you, Daniels whispered fiercely. Not with Rex here. Not with any of us here. Rex licked her cheek gently, calming her, grounding her. The courtroom, moments ago filled with rage, now filled with tears. The judge removed his glasses, visibly shaken. Let the record reflect, he said quietly. This K9 is a hero. Emily curled deeper into Rex's fur. Rex stood tall, chest forward, eyes locked on the doorway where the defendant had been taken. A guardian, a protector, unshakable. And as the chaos dissolved into stunned silence, one truth rose above it all. This case wasn't just about lies anymore. It was about the courage of a child and the dog who refused to let her face danger alone. The courtroom felt different on the final day. Quieter, but not with fear this time. It was the quiet that comes before a truth too heavy to ignore. A silence filled with respect, anticipation, and something almost sacred. Emily sat beside her mother in the front row, still small in her chair, but no longer curled into herself. There was a softness in her expression now, a fragile kind of strength that hadn't been there before. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers intertwined, trembling only slightly. Beside her, Rex lay on the floor in his usual poised position, but even he felt different. His eyes were softer, calmer, watchful in a quieter way, as if he understood this was the end of something, not the beginning. Daniel stood behind them, hands clasped behind his back, shoulders straight, but his heart was anything but steady. Every time he looked at Emily and Rex together, the memory of the defendant lunging toward her flashed behind his eyes. And every time he fought down the same burning mix of rage and relief. The judge entered. The room rose. But today, the judge's expression wasn't stern. It was thoughtful, almost emotional. "Please be seated," he said. He lifted a stack of papers, then set them aside without touching them. The truth, it seemed, didn't need to be read. "Before I deliver the final ruling," the judge began, "I want to acknowledge what brought us here." His gaze shifted to Emily, gentle, steady. "This court relies on evidence, logic, and the law," he said. "But sometimes, justice comes from a different place, a difficult place, a brave place." He paused. The entire room held its breath. And this time, justice began with a child. Emily stiffened. Her mother's hand gently squeezed her shoulder. "Most adults fear courtrooms, the judge continued softly. "Many grown men won't speak when danger threatens them. Yet this little girl, an 8-year-old child, found the courage to stand in front of strangers and tell a truth that terrified her." Emily lowered her head. Tears shimmered. Daniel swallowed hard. "And because she spoke," the judge said firmly, "a dangerous man has been stopped. Because she refused to be silenced, other children will never endure what she did." A quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The judge turned his gaze toward Rex. "And then," he said softly, "there is the second reason we're all here today." Rex lifted his head, ears perked. The judge smiled faintly. "This dog." The courtroom stilled. While adults argued, while lies tangled deeper, while fear tried to quiet the truth, this dog listened. He noticed. He sensed what humans could not. And he acted. Daniel's chest tightened. Rex blinked calmly, understanding in his eyes. "This dog uncovered evidence hidden beneath deception," the judge said. "He protected a child with more courage than many grown men. And when danger came for her," his voice thickened, "he put himself between evil and innocence without hesitation." Emily's tears finally fell. She reached down and rested her small hand on Rex's back. Rex leaned into her touch with a soft, calming sigh. Then something extraordinary happened. The judge stepped down from the bench. A murmur swept through the gallery, but no one spoke. He walked slowly toward Rex and knelt beside him. Rex straightened, ears tilted forward. The judge rested a hand on Rex's shoulder. His voice turned reverent, tender. "Today, this dog upheld the truth. Better than any human!" The room erupted. Applause thundered. Reporters stood. Officers wiped their eyes. Even the bailiff clapped. Emily covered her mouth, overwhelmed with emotion, and leaned into Rex. Daniels felt something inside him break loose. Not pain, but pride. The judge returned to the bench, lifting his gavel. "And now," he said, "let justice be declared." The gavel dropped, sharp, final. "The court finds the defendant guilty on all charges." Applause surged again, triumphant, relieved, echoing through every corner of the courtroom. Emily sobbed openly, Rex leaning into her with gentle warmth. Daniels knelt beside them both. "You did it, partner," he whispered into Rex's ear. "You saved her." Rex nudged his cheek in return. And in that moment, surrounded by applause, tears, and the overwhelming feeling of justice finally served, Daniels understood something with absolute certainty. Heroes come in all forms, but some wear a badge in their heart long before they earn it on their collar.